You are listening to the cycling podcast at the Giro d'Italia, supported by Science in Sport. Today we are in Torino.
Filippo, could you quickly tell me your highlight of this Giro?
The highlight is the Giro. Hello, I'm Stefan Küng from Team BMC. It was a good Giro with ups and downs. Highlights, hard to pick, but I would say the warmth. We were welcomed always by the fans, and we had the good weather on our side. So I would say highlight was kind of the whole Giro, and it was nice to race.
Thank you very much. Perfect.
Pretty much Roglic. For me, I think was a lot of highlights. So if I'm honest, I couldn't say exactly which one because it was too crazy my first Grand Tour. So
Not your own stage win.
Yeah, of course, but also with my team we achieved really a lot, and it was too crazy.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
I'm Laura Meseguer, Eurosport reporter. This is the last day of the Giro Italia. It's been a tough Giro Italia. I can't tell you why, but I think in general we feel more tired than in the Tour de France, which is really not normal. I think maybe because we started in the Netherlands, maybe the 3 rest days weren't rest days. Maybe there were not 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks of race. But I think it's been a great Giro. If I have to mention a moment, personally, maybe it was the barbecue we had yesterday with Eurosport at the finish line. Because, as I said, as it's been a hard race, we didn't have much time for fun and to be together, the team from the start and the team from the finish with Fletcher, Ashley, and the production track. But also I think it's been, I can highlight one moment from the Giro because I think it's been special in the sense that we saw a lot of riders really fighters, you know. And this, for example, from Stephen Kruijswijk. I think it's his example as a fighter, and it's good to have it maybe for your own life, no, as a learning experience. And the same with Nibali, that he was so far in the GC and now he's winning the Giro, and with Esteban, all these young riders. But I think it's been really nice. Normally, I have the experience of the Giro that you enjoy much more the atmosphere, and this year it's been great, but we didn't have the time to enjoy it. But I think I keep with that, like the Giro of the fighters.
I'm Daniel Friebe, I'm race for BMC Racing Team. I think the end was a good Giro. I mean, we try every day for the break, we try everywhere, also in the climb, on the sprint, and the breakaway, and we do our best. So we don't have to say anything. I mean, it's just a pity because we don't have a victory, but at least we have some, breakaway classification and intermediate sprint classification. We have Atapuma in 9 in GC, so it's a good Giro.
My name is Gianluca Brambilla from Ethics Quickstep. It's difficult to explain in a few seconds. 22 days of suffering and also of success. I think I started really well to be together with Marcel and help him to be in a good position. Then I won in Arezzo and also pink jersey for 2 days and an amazing time trial. I can keep it. So then I work also for my teammate Bob Jungels, and again a good stage in Pinerolo with Matteo Trentin that he won, and I think I had a really good Giro.
Albert Timmer, team giant option. And it is the first couple of days in Holland, to be honest. With the atmosphere, pink jersey in the team, that's definitely the highlight for this race.
Seems like a long time ago now.
Really, really long time, yeah, definitely.
Adam Hansen, Lotto Soudal. The highlight is 4 stage wins. 4 stage wins, so can't complain about that.
And finishing?
And finishing 14th, hopefully.
So roll on the 15th.
Sorry?
Roll on the 15th.
Yeah, come on, bring it on.
Hello, my name's Richard Moore, and I am with Daniel Friebe.
Hello, Richard.
For one final time, Daniel.
Dove siamo?
Oh, Turin, Torino.
Very good.
We're in the press centre. It's a bit of a bustling place. We've got a nice glass of red wine, lots of local delicacies on offer. We were played in there by a selection of Vox Pops, riders, team directors, fellow journalists, just selecting their highlight of this Giro. We'll hear a few more of those later on. We've got a very packed show tonight, haven't we?
Yeah, jam-packed. Not sure we're going to fit it all in.
Well, we'll try our best. We've got lots to come. What do we want to start with, Daniel? What's the start? Well, you're holding up Wolfie. You're holding up
Wolfie.
Lupo.
I bought
Lupo
a cuddly Wolfie. I couldn't resist for my nephew George. We talked a lot about Wolfie, the mascot of the Giro d'Italia. Wasn't allowed into France. The French are very strict on cuddly wolves. So yeah, I thought I would honour what has been a talking point over the last week by buying a cuddly wolfie for my cousin. My nephew George.
Was it competitively priced, or was it priced like
€15
items at the Tour de France?
Very reasonable
For official merchandise.
And
that's
of course,
not bad at all.
Vincenzo Nibali was awarded his final wolfie, or only his second wolfie, because he's only had the pink jersey 2 days, but he brought his first wolfie into the press conference yesterday, didn't he? Almost in the manner of Cadel Evans. Remember when Cadel Evans was leading the Tour de France, he'd bring his cuddly lion in every single day, and Nibali brought his wolfie in to the press conference yesterday and did another press conference tonight. We'll probably talk about that later, but he did make a bit of a revelation that he has indeed been slightly ill during this Giro. He suffered from gastroenteritis. Is that how you pronounce gastro?
You're asking me for
stomach problems. He's had stomach problems, and that might
you can't just say gastro. I don't know how you wouldn't know you had gastro.
Well, it's pretty obvious, Richard.
That's what I mean.
You wouldn't know. You wouldn't know
how he wouldn't realise he had it.
Well, he did realise, but the version that he gave, the explanation he gave tonight, was that they tried to keep quiet about the stomach problems so as not to expose himself to attacks.
Been a lot of illness at this Giro. I mean, there's always a lot of illness in a Grand Tour. Let's start. It was a lot happened for a final stage, which is usually a showcase, mainly thanks to the rain. It was raining quite heavily today, very slippy roads, lots of little cobbles. So there were quite a few incidents, quite a few crashes, and that created a bit of drama on the final day. Let's go to Watford, to North of London.
Yeah, very much north of
London. The home of Lionel Birnie. I wondered today whether, if we do the Vuelta, whether Lionel will do the Tale of the Tapas. But he is, during this Giro, doing the Tale of the Tapa. So here is Lionel with his Tale of the Tapa.
This is the final tale of the Tapa from the 2016 Giro d'Italia. I'll wipe a tear from my eye to sum up the events of the final stage, which was 163 kilometres from Cuneo to Torino. It should have been a fairly straightforward procession for the peloton, but there was drama all the way. One man who had a relatively straightforward day was Vincenzo Nibali, who crossed the line in his pink jersey safely and confirmed his second Giro title. But there were plenty of incidents on the road. An early crash brought down Lars Bak of Lotto Soudal, and the Dane had to withdraw from the race with a fractured shoulder blade. Another crash claimed Johan van Zyl of Dimension Data and Jascha Soetelin of Movistar, and they also pulled out within sight of the finish. The race itself was brought to life by two Lotto Jumbo riders. Martin Cialinghi and Jos van Emden attacked together before they reached the circuit in Torino and built a nice lead. For a while they were chased by a group of Manuele Boaro, Gianluca Brambilla and Tim Wellens. With 32 kilometres to go once they were on the circuit, Cialinghi and van Emden had around about a minute on the peloton. Behind that, there was a crash which brought down second place Esteban Chaves and Rigoberto Urán. And as the rain began to fall with 29 kilometres to go, the circuit was getting a bit dicey. And it was by this point that the jury had taken the decision to neutralise the general classification times, meaning that everyone just had to cross the line safely to complete the Giro. They'd done this before at Bibione when André Greipel won his third stage of the Giro. And that meant that the bunch split, so that only those who had an eye on the stage win took the big risk to stay at the front. With 25 kilometres to go, the Brambilla-Wellens group was caught, and with 19 kilometres to go, Cilingi and Van Emden were still out in front, but their lead was coming down because Trek were riding hard for Giacomo Nizzolo and Lampre were riding for Sasha Modolo, the two Italian sprinters yet to get a win in this Giro. With around about 11.5 kilometres to go, Cilingi sat up and let Van Emden go on alone. Van Emden's a better time trialist, so he had the best chance of preserving the small advantage he had, and he lasted till around about 6.7 kilometres to go when what was left of the peloton caught him on a small climb. There was another spectacular crash for Bardiani rider Sonny Colbrelli as he tried to attack on that climb. He clipped either the curb or a spectator and went down heavily. Fortunately, he was okay and crossed the line to complete his Giro. In the finishing straight, Sean Deby of Lotto Soudal looked like he was going to have a good chance of victory, but he was caught and passed by Edoardo Grosso of Nippo Vini Fantini, and then the sprint proper opened up, and Giacomo Nizzolo, in his red jersey, looked to have won the stage. But he moved across from the middle of the road towards the barrier on his left-hand side, and it was a scrappy old sprint. There was more drama afterwards because Sasha Modolo, who crossed the line behind Nizzolo, waved his arm in protest, and after some deliberation of around 20 or 30 minutes, the jury handed the victory to Nikias Arndt of Giant Alpecin. Ironically, Arndt hadn't been impeded by Nizzolo's sprint, and Modolo, the man who had been most affected, didn't really profit. Anyway, it meant that Giant Alpecin finished the Giro as they began it with a stage win. It was also the 7th win for Germany in this Giro. So, in summary, 154 of the 198 riders finished the Giro. Last man was Trek's Jack Bobridge, who finished more than 5 hours down. 13 of the 22 teams won stages. The pink jersey was worn by Tom Dumoulin, Marcel Kittel, Dumoulin again, Gianluca Brambilla, Bob Jungels, Andre Amador, Steven Kruijswijk, Esteban Chaves, and finally Vincenzo Nibali, who beat Chaves by 52 seconds, with Alejandro Valverde taking the 3rd place on the podium. The red jersey for the points competition was a healthy consolation for Nizzolo, who was denied that stage win on the final day. The King of the Mountains jersey, that's the blue jersey, was won by Sky's Mikel Nieve. The white jersey for Best Young Rider was won by Bob Jungels. Astana won the team's classification. And just a word for Lotto Soudal's Adam Hansen, who completed his 14th Grand Tour in a row, and Tinkoff's Matteo Tozzato, who completed his 27th Grand Tour at the age of 42. Well, that's it from the Giro d'Italia. Hopefully we'll be back with daily coverage again next year, which will be the 100th edition. Back to you, Richard and Daniel.
Thank you for that, Lionel. So let's talk about the stage briefly. We realised today that we hadn't spoken about Giacomo Nizzolo. He's been in the points jersey for quite some time. He's had a string of 2nd and 3rd placings in the Giro, has never won. Crossed the line first today, arms in there, and then he was relegated. Daniel, we were battling our way through crowds to get to the finish. Didn't see the sprint finish. I did watch it later. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it. No, you didn't. Well, he did veer quite alarmingly to his left. It was complicated because Sasha Modolo was coming up his left. The barriers were there. The road did curve round to the right. And some people were suggesting that Nizzolo didn't deviate much. He did make quite a dramatic sort of left move to block Modolo. And Nikias Arndt was the guy that came through the middle and has been awarded the stage win. So a bit of controversy there. He went to the podium, Nizzolo, to get his red jersey points winner, not happy at all. And I believe you were speaking to his sports director or the manager of his team when word came through that he'd been disqualified.
Well, as you say, Richard, I was speaking to Luca Guercilena, who's the manager of Trek Segafredo. At that point, we were all pretty sure that he had won the stage. In fact, the first I knew of this review that was being conducted by the race jury, that they were looking at the footage, was Luca telling me midway through our interview. So here's Luca Guercilena. Should point out that immediately after this interview, he turned to his colleague Adriano Baffi, who's a DS at Trek Segafredo. Baffi was on the phone. He just got the very bad news that Nizzolo had been disqualified. Luca Guercilena, the manager of Trek Segafredo, the victory finally arrived for Giacomo Nizzolo, and a big relief for you?
Well, I mean, that was after 9 second place. That was something that we deserve. We are still waiting the final decision from the commissaires, for what we understand. I think Giacomo was clearly in front and, okay, he moved the direction, but it was in front of the other riders, so I don't see the point. But okay, we'll see. I think that Giacomo deserves it, and that should have been the perfect situation for us with the red jersey and one stage victory. But okay, we'll see.
And how has Giacomo developed over the course of this Giro, and has this been a breakthrough, a turning point in his career?
No, I think that Giacomo turned as a sprinter immediately. He's clearly a good sprinter, probably not at the best at the level of the super fast Kittel or Greipel, but amongst all the others he's one of the best, and for sure he's a solid rider. When the races are longer, he's always better. So he's perfect for the classics and also for the stage races. After 3 weeks, he's getting better and better. So I think that's his best qualities.
And just finally, Luca, you said he's not quite at the level of the very best sprinters at the moment, but can he reach that level?
Well, I think he can reach it. Still, he needs a couple of years to develop stronger legs. It's a tough fight to arrive at that level, but for sure that's the aim we have. That's the aim to support him. I think he will turn. If I see him on a long term, I see him more for classics than not for pure sprinting.
So that was a good bit of timing for you, Daniel, to be speaking to Luca Guercilena when news filtered through of his rider's disqualification.
Well, not really from their point of view, obviously, but I think, to be honest, it was a bit of I'm loath to say that the red jersey was a hollow victory, but certainly his kind of ego as a sprinter needed that victory. And, you know, we do know that sprinters, well, it's a bit of a cliche that sprinters have big egos, but they do want to win stages. And finishing this Giro d'Italia without a stage win, I'm sure will sting slightly for Nizzolo. And it was interesting here to hear... It was interesting... Sorry, can I do that again? It was interesting there to hear Luca suggests that Nizzolo, although he's a young rider, may not ever reach the level of the best sprinters in the world, the Cavendishes, the Kittels, and that perhaps his future is as a classics rider.
Well, there was, of course, a big winner today. Nibali we talked a bit about his luck, you know, and today he stayed upright when others fell all around him. Chaves had a nasty crash at one point, got back up. I think Chaves might have crashed twice, I'm not sure. You spoke to Matt White afterwards, we'll hear from him later. Rigoberto Urán had a very nasty fall, actually, and needed some medical attention. Afterwards, he was quite a while in the ambulance that was parked beside the Cannondale bus. Lots of Colombian fans. Actually, I was at the Movistar bus as well at one point, and there were a lot of Costa Rican fans there for Andre Amador. Lots of Colombians for Urán, and, you know, various other buses as well, because Colombia have 3 riders in the top 10. 8 nationalities represented in the top 10. But 3 Colombians, quite remarkable. And one of the features of this Giro, and indeed the Tour, has been these countries being represented in large and very loud numbers by fans.
Is this a plug for our Kilometre Zero, Richard? Our Kilometre Zero about
Make it that if you want.
International dimension of the Giro d'Italia. But yeah, you are right, and it's typical of, symptomatic of how professional cycling is one of the rare truly international sports now, and it really is. From every continent there are riders who are competitive, and every year there are more riders from more different countries. And as you say, it's what is very refreshing is to see their fans also making long journeys in a lot of cases to come and see the races. And, you know, the organisation, I think, this afternoon in Torino left a lot to be desired. There were a lot of fans blocked behind the podium. People couldn't move, and it actually got a bit dangerous at times. However, it was also nice to see a lot of Italian fans out and getting very excited about Vincenzo Nibali. And one of the highlights of the day was an impromptu rendition of l'Inno di Mameli, the Italian national anthem, at the Astana team bus.
Well, I think I can hear another very familiar tune, Daniel.
Vittoria. Victory.
Eurosport, the home of cycling.
Thank you very much to Eurosport for sponsoring us throughout the year and at this Giro d'Italia, where they sponsor our Pédaleur de Charme competition. Before I get onto that, before we move on, we did have the Shark's Tale, the final instalment of the Shark's Tale at the end of that last segment. And that was a very, very simple one, Daniel. Didn't need much.
Well, it was.
Did you make this one up again?
No, I said all that I needed to say. It was one word, victory. And, what more eloquent way to end than that, Richard? It's been an emotional journey with the Shark's Tail over the last 21 stages. I hope everyone has enjoyed it. And what more fitting way to end?
Yeah, I mean, you ended on a slightly sour note by making up last night's instalment, which, on social media and so on, people have reacted to with horror, questioning your credibility in all sorts of areas. So I hope tonight's was a legitimate entry, a legitimate instalment from the actual book.
I think I'm fairly safe in assuming that he mentioned that he used the word victory at some point in the 321 pages of the Shark's Tail.
Okay, well, listen, we're going to do 2 Pédaleur de Charme awards today. This morning we made a presentation to Esteban Chaves for overall Pédaleur de Charme. He was consistently nominated. I think he epitomizes what Pédaleur de Charme is all about. He's a charming man with a lovely smile. I sent Brian Nygaard, the Orica Green Edge press man, onto the team bus with a Pédaleur de Charme t-shirt, and I did say to him, if you could, Brian, it would be great if you get a picture of Esteban smiling. I think it took several takes, but he eventually emerged with a picture of Chaves smiling, holding up his Pédaleur de Charme t-shirt. So a very popular overall winner of Pédaleur de Charme. Our Pédaleur de Charme for today is Lotto Soudal's Tim Wellens. He was on the attack today, Daniel.
Oh, was he?
But also...
This sounds about as dubious as my Shark's Tail from yesterday.
Also, we happen to have a spare...
that's what
I thought. We happen to have a spare picture of Tim Wellens with a Pédaleur de Charme t-shirt. So he is our Pédaleur de Charme for today. Congratulations, Tim. On Esteban Chaves, though, Daniel, I think you were speaking to him this morning.
Well, I did. Not quite 24 hours, but the day after he lost the pink jersey, it was seen, at the time as a very unfortunate and disappointing result for Chaves. His family were waiting. Everyone was really waiting to crown him the new Giro d'Italia champion. It didn't happen. Nibali overhauled his deficit from Chaves. However, Chaves, like Stephen Kruijswijk yesterday, very, very magnanimous, as he was this morning when I spoke to him outside the Orica Green Edge bus.
I'm really happy. I'm also tired, but today we will enjoy this. It's a little bit dry, but that's Samara. We feel the warmth for the people, the warmth for my girlfriend, for my family. And in the final, this is the more beautiful thing, the support for the people. Yeah, we not take the Maya Rosa, but this is the more important,
Esteban, any regrets at all about yesterday?
No, just the best won yesterday, no? The best won. I don't have the legs yesterday, and it's the life. Oh, everything is special, everything. I'm with the Australians. I feel like a half Australian, My heart is a half Australian. It's my first podium in the big tour. This is only the beginning.
And how are you gonna spend the next few days and the next week? Some quality time with your family, I imagine.
Yeah, spend more time with the family. Switch off for everything, and I started thinking in the next objective. I don't know what is the next objective, and this is not the moment for answer this. But yeah, I'm happy. We are happy, and we enjoy this.
So that was Esteban Chaves, 26 years old. He is going to be a force to be reckoned with over the next few years, as he was at the Vuelta last year as well. Very popular rider, and I think everybody enjoyed watching him race, and a lot of people would have liked him to have hung on for the win. You did the rounds at Orica Green Edge, I think, Daniel?
I did, because a couple of riders in particular have been crucial for Chaves in the mountains. We've spoken on numerous occasions during this Giro d'Italia about their relative weakness or their supposed weakness in the mountains. They really pulled a couple of aces out of the pack in Ruben Plaza, and the big surprise was Damien Hansen, the young Australian rider who really excelled himself. So I also spoke to Damien Hansen this morning about his experience over the last 3 weeks and what it had been like to ride for Esteban Chaves. So Esteban doesn't have any regrets about yesterday. Do you, as someone who has played a very important role for him on this Giro?
At the end of the day, he ran away with second in the Giro, which is a massive credit to him, and it's also massive credit to the team who has worked really hard for the last 3 weeks, and it takes some serious concentration day in, day out, massive amounts of effort to save as much energy as possible for Esteban, and for him just to do the finishing touches, and his best result of the finish.
And he's been great with us, Damien, smiling every day, and just a real delight to deal with. But what's he been like as the team leader over the last 3 weeks?
Yeah, I tell everyone it's just an honour to work for him. He's so grateful for everything, from the support that he gets from the team, but also to just the way he goes about life with his friends, family. It's really special, and it makes what I do really rewarding.
And it has been a bit of a breakthrough for you this Giro, but is there an image or a day or a ride in particular that you'll keep remembering and you'll always cherish from this Giro?
There's been many moments, I guess. But it all adds up to the end result, and we're definitely happy with second. So.
Damien, can I ask one question? For the team, for the belief amongst you all, I mean, you've all had key roles in the end result. How important has it been for the team with this belief in being a Grand Tour team?
The way Esteban puts it, it's just the start, and it's the start for all of us. So I look forward to continuing my role, and for sure whether it be the end of this year with the Vuelta or years to come, there's a Grand Tour win for Orica Green Edge and for Esteban Chaves.
If it is the Vuelta of Spain, you'll be looking forward to it already, even though you may be tired right now.
Yeah, for sure. You're always tired now, but a few weeks rest and stuff, and then we focus on our next objective. So we'll be ready to go.
Good stuff.
So it was Damien Housen, one of the unsung heroes perhaps of this Giro, and you also spoke to someone we've spoken to a lot on the podcast at the Giro this year. He's always a good guy to speak to. He's always got forthright things to say. He's very open. Matt White.
Look, mate.
Did you take up the challenge? Did you prefix every question with Luke?
I didn't. I spoke to Matt White about yesterday, whether Orica Green Edge had any regrets, and also about Esteban Chaves' future. Matt, 24 hours since, I suppose the slight disappointment of yesterday's stage and losing the pink jersey, but now 24 hours on, have you got any regrets about yesterday?
None at all. Yeah, and I agree, it was disappointing. It was so close to winning a Grand Tour, but 24 hours later, you got to put that into perspective. Now, no one expected Esteban Chaves to be on the podium at the Giro d'Italia 3 weeks ago, and we've done it. So we've got to be happy. We've got no regrets. Sure, things can always change in a 3-week tour, and that's the same for everybody. But what we've achieved these last 3 weeks has been very, very impressive, and we're certainly very proud of Caleb, Esteban, all the boys for what they've done from stage 1 to stage 21.
And you said yesterday, or you said before yesterday's stage, you thought you knew exactly what would happen and how Movistar and Aston would race, and presumably it did turn out the way you expected yesterday.
Yeah, it did. Look, you can predict things, but you've still got to have the legs to be able to salvage those tactics. And what we come across the last couple of days was Vincenzo Nibali with very, very good shape, and also Esteban you could see he was getting tired. And also, look, we didn't talk about it during the week, but he wasn't 100% health-wise for the last 5 days as well. But we're making excuses. Vincenzo was too strong in the last 2 days, and Esteban did all he could. But to finish second place to a guy who's won the Giro, the Tour, the Vuelta is certainly no disgrace.
And a lot of people sort of making out that Vincenzo's was a miraculous transformation, really. But just to put that in perspective, how much worse did Esteban get over the last couple of days, and how much do you think Nibali got better?
It's a hard one. Vincenzo certainly improved a lot those last 4 days, and I think Esteban was relative to the other GC guys. I think he had a tough final climb yesterday. You saw that he couldn't hold the wheel of Alejandro and Iran in 5 kilometres from the finish, but I think his level went down similar to all the other guys in the top 10, and all better than most of them. Otherwise would have overtaken him. But it was a good battle right to the end.
And just last thing, Matt, is it too early for him next year to think about the Tour de France, or will you be back here, or will you be targeting the Vuelta next year?
Look, we're definitely going to the Vuelta this year to target general classification, and look, I would like him to go to the Tour de France next year. But first, we want to see the courses as well. But he's definitely ready for the Tour de France, and he's definitely ready for general classification there. And but look, it's part of a long-term plan we've had for Esteban to do the Giro this year, the Vuelta this year, and then he'll be ready to win a Grand Tour very, very soon.
So Matt White there saying that Esteban Chaves is ready for the Tour de France, Daniel, but presumably not this year.
No, he's going to target the Vuelta this year, and one would presume we'll have a very good shot at winning the Vuelta a España. Before that, of course, is the Olympic road race. We have speculated and we've talked about the Olympic road race, maybe not during the podcast, but certainly on our long car journeys. These are the kind of things that come up in conversation, aren't they? And we've talked about the 5-man teams at the Olympics and what an unbelievable outfit Colombia could have if they pick all of their strongest riders with, on what is supposedly a very, very mountainous course or a very hilly course with Atapuma, who we've seen here in good form, Quintana, Uran, Chaves, that's just naming 4 of them.
It's an abundance, Rich, as I said earlier, 3 Colombians in the top 10. And Chaves, we also, I think, have spoken at this Giro about Orica Green Edge, a team I remember we were very dismissive of back in 2013 at the start of the Tour there. They were still a young team and hadn't done a lot, but they have built a really formidable outfit that performs in all races on all terrain. They've won monuments. They've now contended in a Grand Tour.
Well, I think the most impressive thing about Orica Green Edge is how they've taken the long-term view, and this is a rarity in professional cycling. We've praised Giant Alpecin for doing this as well this year. They really look 1 year, 2 years, 3 years ahead, and you heard Matt White there talking about the long-term plan that they have for Esteban Chaves. They actually had a long-term plan for Esteban Chaves before they even signed him, because he was a guy who had been looked at and rejected by other teams because he had a very bad shoulder problem, hadn't he? And Orica Green Edge took it upon themselves to really get that problem fixed and get him fighting fit again. And again, that was all part of a long-term vision that they had for him. And their long-term vision for him now seems to include a Tour de France debut next year, so in 2017. I'm not sure that, with his repertoire of skills at the moment, I'm not sure he's going to contend for the Tour de France straight away, but he has progressed significantly in the last year, so if he continues that rate of progression, and this is another expert on Colombian cycling, Gianni Savio, was in the press room today, the Androni Sidamek team manager, and he was chatting to me about Esteban Chaves, and that is also what Gianni said, that Chaves has a large margin of improvement.
He's got quite an interesting contrast to Nairo Quintana, I think, in terms of personality. That's my impression anyway. I learned the other day that Team Sky also seriously considered signing Chaves. They were looking at the time at Sergio Henao and went for him instead, but Chaves was somebody they considered.
Dave Brailsford is the Arsene Wenger of cycling. He's almost signed everyone. He's almost signed Quintana, Contador, Nibali.
Not sure about
not
that.
about Contador, but you name it.
Anyway. You are listening to the cycling podcast at the Giro d'Italia, supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport, fueled by science.
Thank you very much to Science in Sport for sponsoring us at this Giro d'Italia. They've been great partners at this Giro. Thanks in particular to Stephen Moon, the chief executive there, who has been a great supporter of the podcast as well. You can get 20% off still on Science and Sport products. Go to scienceandsport.com and enter SIS20, SIS20 at the checkout, and get as many Science and Sport products as you can for as long as that code works. Now, Daniel, after the start today, you disappeared for what you promised me would be a quick coffee. 5-10 minutes turned into a good half hour. I was kicking my heels waiting, worried that we wouldn't even make it to Turin. Who were you meeting?
Well, I was meeting an old acquaintance, a former rider called Miculà Dematteis, who lives actually at the foot of the Colle dell'Agnello, which the race climbed on Friday. Now, Miculà Dematteis briefly became famous or infamous or notorious in Italy because in 2007, after numerous doping scandals at that year's Tour de France, the Gazzetta dello Sport, which is really the mouthpiece for sport in Italy, they published an editorial in which their director, Candido Cannavò, suggested that there wasn't a single professional bike rider that he could trust. Miculà Dematteis at that time rode for a small team called Tenax, and he took great exception to this, or he wanted to really defend himself and stand up for his principles. So he wrote a long letter to La Gazzetta dello Sport in which he said in no uncertain terms that he had never doped, would never consider doping. He had only ever seen one doctor, and that was his family doctor for colds and flu and that kind of thing. And it caused quite a stir at the time. Unfortunately for Dematteis, it also caused a bit of a stir with his team, Tenax, who didn't renew his contract. He then found himself in a position where he didn't have a pro contract for the following year, but he went to ride for Saunier Duval's Continental Division team, a feeder team, with the promise that if he won races that year, he would graduate to their pro team. What happened that summer in 2008, Riccardo Ricot and Leonardo Piepoli both tested positive at the Tour de France, and Saunier Duval ceased to be. So Miculà found himself without a contract, without a job, without a future. So he was effectively, and he believes partly because of this letter that he wrote to La Gazzetta dello Sport, exiled from professional cycling and with no real prospects of making a career anymore. And I wrote about it at the time, various journalists did, and 8-9 years on, he contacted me this week and suggested we meet up in Cuneo before the start of the stage. So we had a coffee after the stage, and I asked him whether he ever thought and regretted writing that letter, which ultimately, possibly, led to him losing his job as a professional cyclist.
Ma sì, sicuramente quella lettera che ho scritto nel 2007, quindi sono 9 anni ormai, quest'anno era agosto, ha influito molto quell'anno, il quale appunto mi vedeva in una situazione un po'.
The letter I wrote had an impact not only on that year but on the years thereafter. It was August 2007 and the team was weighing up whether to renew my contract or not. The letter definitely ended up weighing me down, if you like. I think a lot about it, but it was one of those things that you just do because they feel right at the time. Maybe it was naive of me to think that, but it went the way it went. At least I can say that I was true to my principles. In the letter, I only wrote about myself. All I said was that I had only ever ridden with the strength in my legs and nothing else. I had only ever ridden on bread and water. I decided to make a stand for my principles, and I still think the same way today. In that respect, I definitely don't regret doing it. I should also say that I did get a little bit of support at the time. Fabio Baldato was my teammate that year. He's now a DS with BMC. He said at the time that I'd done the right thing. Roberto Petito was another one who supported me. So yes, some riders did support me, but unfortunately that wasn't enough. It was the team managers who obviously didn't see things in quite the same way as I did. Consequently, I found doors shutting in my face.
So fascinating to hear from Dematteis, Daniel, especially in light of what we were discussing last night. We were discussing some of the suspicion that has blown up around Vincenzo Nibali since his apparent sort of comeback, transformation, Lazarus-like recovery in the last couple of days. We'll get on to talk a bit more about that later. But you spoke a bit more to Dematteis, and I believe he's not a typical whistleblower, is he, in the sense that he seems to acknowledge that in terms of what's going on now in cycling, he doesn't know.
No, that's right, Richard. Just to say that I thought it was important to speak to him today because there have been questions about Nibali over the past few days, and sometimes we can become blasé about the issue of doping in cycling. We've been so bombarded over the years by scandals that we almost start to tolerate former dopers, and we almost kind of turn a blind eye when they've been reintegrated and re-embraced. And people have pointed out over the last couple of days that Michele Scarponi has been crucial for Vincenzo Nibali. Scarponi, who's been associated with Eufemiano Fuentes and Michele Ferrari, and also Alexander Vinokurov, the team manager of Astana. I talked there about Miculà's letter to La Gazzetta, which didn't talk about other riders at all. It only talked about himself, and he's the only purpose of that letter was to say, no, you're wrong about cycling, because there is one rider who I know is clean, and that's me. But that letter came about partly because of Vinokourov's positive test for a blood transfusion in the 2007 Tour de France and various other scandals that summer. And Vinokourov is at the Giro celebrating victory for Vincenzo Nibali, and Miculà is on the outside looking in and feeling quite uneasy really about being at a professional bike race now. But you talk there about whether he's a typical whistleblower or not. There was an interview with one of our colleagues, Andy Hood, in Velo News, and he interviewed Jörg Jakscher, the former German professional, this week, and Jörg Jakscher was quite damning really, wasn't he, about the current picture in professional cycling, suggested nothing had changed. So I put the same question to Miculà. Has anything changed, as far as he can see from a distance, in professional cycling over the last 9 years?
Ma io credo che il livello ce l'avevo sicuramente, tant'è che anche dai valori, appunto, parlando poi di valori tecnici, coi test e tutto, io ero stato seguito.
I don't think team managers could honestly say at the time that I wasn't good enough. I know lab tests aren't everything, but I had been trained by the Mappe Centre that the Mappe team and a lot of top pros over the years had used. And I know that my test said very clearly that I was easily good enough to compete at the pro level. I come here today to watch the Giro, and to be honest, I'm very conflicted. I would much rather be at home not watching this rather than standing here getting stressed. I'm only really here for professional reasons. I haven't followed professional cycling very much at all over the last few years, but I feel a kind of rage towards the whole scene. I'm 32, nearly 33, and I'm absolutely certain that I could be among the riders who have just rolled out of here with the Giro d'Italia. Being on the outside looking in hurts, to be honest. I can't see it through the same eyes as a fan. I've only looked at cycling from a distance since I stopped racing as a pro, so honestly, I can't say or guess how much things have changed. I know that there are more tests now. I also know that the tests are better. Consequently, I have faith in the fact that things must have changed since the days when I was racing. That was probably the worst era of all, looking back. They were the Operación Puerto days, the years immediately after Lance Armstrong, the years that Danilo De Luca has spoken about in his book and in interviews recently. I really hope that things have changed, because I love the sport of cycling, and that will not change.
Cosa succedeva in quegli anni, perché lui ha corso in quegli anni lì, e io spero sinceramente, ma perché effettivamente io voglio bene al ciclismo.
Interesting, nuanced stuff, really, from Dematteis. And we do hear all the time. I mean, we're as guilty of it as anybody. And not to denigrate our colleague Andy Hood at all, who did the interview with Jörg Jakscher. But if you want to do an interview 10 years after Operation Puerto, he's the guy you go to, isn't he? Because you know that he'll give you bombshell quotes. And we're all guilty of this, because we do, as journalists, tend to go to the people who are happiest to speak without always weighing up whether what they say is actually factually correct or not.
Well, yeah, and I think Miculà was very honest about how much he does and doesn't know, and he was honest about the fact that he doesn't have any day-to-day contact with professional cycling anymore, so he can't possibly judge how much has changed. And I can understand why current professionals feel aggrieved when they hear Jörg Jakscher sounding off really about how professional cycling is exactly the same as it was in 2006, 2007.
When he doesn't know. Now, interestingly, in the context of this Giro and the man of the hour, Nibali, Dematteis was a contemporary of Nibali's, raced with him, knew him very well. And I think you spoke to him about Nibali in the final part of your interview, Daniel.
I did. I put it to Miculà. There's been a lot of speculation in the last week about Nibali's transformation. A lot of people suggesting that it was suspicious. So I asked him, does he have faith in Vincenzo Nibali and his performances here at the Giro?
Ma allora, tanto io e Vincenzo Nibali abbiamo corso assieme.
Vincenzo Nibali and I raced together in every category, from juniors to amateurs, right up to the pro ranks. There's exactly a year between us in age. He was born on November the 14th, 1984, and I was born on the same date in 1983. So it's exactly a year. We were never in the same team, but we always did the same races and used to see each other at races. To those who say that his performances are suspicious, I would reply that Nibali definitely has a big engine. He was really strong as an amateur, and he's shown his ability consistently as a professional. I don't know him personally, but I do think that he's a very well-trained athlete who's capable of riding like he has this weekend. I would also say the same thing that I wrote in that La Gazzetta dello Sport letter in 2007. I can know what I do, but not what others do. I wouldn't put my hand in the fire for anyone. All I'd add is that he'll definitely have been tested a fair bit, and nothing I've seen on this Giro has made me suspect there's some kind of foul play going on. So yes, in the main, I would say that I trust Vincenzo.
Sotterfugi, se vogliamo metterla in quel modo, e mi fido abbastanza, diciamo, dai, sì.
So that was the third and final part of our Dematteis interview. Forgive us for going off piece, but we feel it's a little bit of an exclusive interview and interesting in light of some of the things we were talking about last night, on which we had a bit of correspondence, which I'll read out actually. But just to finish on Dematteis, I think you had something to tell us, Daniel, about what he's up to now.
Well, when he failed to get a contract on a professional team in 2008, he was actually penciled in with a team that was aborted. It was a team it was going to be called H2O, and it was going to be run by Mauro Gianetti, who was the Saunier Duval manager. It came to nothing. So Miculà, what did he do? He went to ride Gran Fondos for a year, and he actually won the UCI World Cup, Gran Fondo World Cup. Since then, he has stayed in cycling in a certain sense. He now has a holiday company. They run fantastic bike tours in Italy and elsewhere, and you can find information on that at www.freedomtoride.it.
Okay, I'm going to read out an email that we received today.
There was one thing I wanted to mention. One more thing I wanted to mention. Do you know, Miculà Dematteis' brothers, twin brothers, one of them holds the world record for kilometre altitude gain running.
So running uphill, and we were trying to work out, weren't we, what was the optimum gradient for that?
Yeah. And the other twin has held the world record at a different time.
Wow. I think, yeah, interesting. I didn't even know such a world record existed. Anyway, we received an email overnight because we did encourage people to respond to our discussion yesterday about Nibali and whether suspicion was justified. So we received this email from Joe Chester, who responds really to a term used by Giro last night, the culture of suspicion. Giro said he had no time for the culture of suspicion. Joe writes that he feels that dismissal of that culture does a disservice to many cycling fans. He describes himself not as a conspiracy theorist or a cynic, but a skeptic. And on Nibali, he says, I do have doubts about Nibali's win. It's not just Vinokourov. The fact that Scarponi, a known cheat, can be allowed to play such a decisive role in this win is a failure of the institutions of the sport. The fact that the UCI is so ineffective in catching these cheats and is so lenient when they do is a major cause of all this doubt among fans, far more so than individual cases, no matter how salacious. I would say that even if Nibali is riding clean, the presence of dopers on his team casts a pall over his win. The fact that Nibali himself has seemingly made his peace with this undermines his credibility all the more. My doubt is not informed by blind cynicism or by a culture of suspicion. I have no idea whether Nibali is clean or not, but the accumulation of all these factors makes it much harder for me to believe him. I think he makes some very reasonable points, and you mentioned, Daniel, how easy it is to become blasé. The point I would like to make, and it's not any kind of defence, you look around, and if Nibali's not at Astana, where is he? The only team with a zero tolerance policy, much derided as that has been, is Team Sky. We've been lauding Matt White. Now, Matt White is an admitted former doper as well. There are lots of people working in the sport at most, if not all, teams with a doping past. So it's extremely difficult. And I would say that in any walk of life, in any profession, you can be in a situation where you don't necessarily agree with the actions or behaviour of your employer. We're journalists. there are newspapers who have had cultures of phone hacking. Does that mean that everybody who works for Rupert Murdoch or Rupert Murdoch-owned newspaper is a phone hacker? I don't think it does. I know it doesn't. So sometimes you don't have an awful lot of choice in who your employer is and how they operate. I do think he makes a valid point, though, in this case. I mean, Astana with Vinokurov at the helm and with other convicted dopers on the team is quite an extreme case, perhaps. However, the rumour is that Nibali will join a team next year being set up in Bahrain by an alleged torturer, and so which is the least worst, if you like, riding for an alleged torturer or a convicted doper. It's a very, I'm not presenting any answers here at all. It's very, very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And one thing I would also add that we didn't say last night is that Vincenzo Nibali has now been around for an awfully long time. He's been around for over 10 years as a professional cyclist, and in terms of hard evidence and smoking guns, there has been very little, and the only thing you can really pin on Nibali is dangerous associations or dubious associations, and there are a few of those. However, I mentioned this before. I mentioned this when he was winning the Tour de France in 2014. There have also been almost as many occasions when Vincenzo Nibali has made some kind of stand against doping and has said things that he didn't need to say, speaking out against doping. So, I think what we're trying to say, Richard, is that we don't know. And actually, at the current period in professional cycling is one of great uncertainty vis-a-vis the doping issue. I was talking to Andy Hood, our colleague, today about this, and we both agreed that whereas once upon a time, sort of 10 years ago, 8 years ago even if you didn't know exactly who was doping, you kind of knew the methods and you knew how they were doing it, and you had an idea of the percentage of guys who were doing it. At the moment, it's very, very hard to find any kind of consensus on that.
I think we agree the culture has changed, and that guys who have had doping past certainly are capable of operating in a completely different way. I think people are very adaptable to the culture. I did sociology at university, so obviously that's how I perceive it. One final point on this, because Daniel's making a sign that we should wrap this section up. One final point, though, it's a point I made last night. I think too much has been made of Nibali's apparent transformation. Kruijswijk and Chaves were his only rivals, really. He lost some time, but not an awful lot, really. He was 3 minutes down on Kruijswijk. Kruijswijk then crashed into an ice wall and effectively took himself out of contention. Chaves cracked both days in the Alps. So Nibali's transformation, Nibali's victory, owes, I think, more to his two closest rivals' capitulation than to his apparently remarkable transformation. And here we as journalists are guilty again, because we write things like Lazarus-like recovery. I wrote that. I don't actually believe it, having written it.
You are listening to the cycling podcast at the Giro d'Italia, supported by Science in Sport. Science in Sport, fueled by science.
Hello, I am the CEO, Patrick Lefebvre. I'm the CEO of Ethics Quickstep. For me, the Giro was fantastic. We saw the big comeback from Marcel Kittel in the first two stages. Then, of course, the fantastic win of Gianluca Brambilla on the parcours of Strade Bianche, sorry. And then, of course, the also fantastic win of Matteo Trentin. And of course, we were coming to do a good Giro, but I never was expecting to win 4 stages and more than this, to be 6th in the overall classification. And Bob having 3 different riders in the pink jersey, and Bob Jungels, who has for 16 days the white jersey.
Is it possible to pick one highlight from all of that?
Oh, it's difficult, but for the nerves, I think the win of Matteo Trentin was the most spectacular.
Matthew White, Head Sports Director, Orica Greenwich. Now that it's finished, I think any Grand Tour, it's been 5 years since I've been with a team that's ridden a Grand Tour for general classification, and you've got a degree of stress and pressure for 3 weeks, and it's just a relief to actually finish off the job. And we saw the circuit here today. It was a pretty tricky circuit, and just to get Esteban through in second position is definitely the highlight.
My name is Marhau Kudus. I'm right with the dimension data. It's my third Grand Tour, so Giro is one of the hardest races from the 3 Grand Tours. So, I survived the last 3 weeks. So, my favorite stage, it was the King stage. It was stage 14 with all day above 1,500 altitude meters. So, it's my favorite stage.
Okay, I'm Xavier Arteche, Team Sky's coach. I would say 2 highlights of the Giro, one or 3 maybe. One of them is Mikel's stage win. I think after Landas, when he went home for us, we changed all the goals, and it was really important for the team morale, this win. The second one, I would say, the Maglia Azzurra, the mountain jersey, because this last week it was one of the main goals of the team. And the third one, I would say, the team spirit the last 2 weeks, because everybody had their own chances to try to do something, and I think everybody changed their mind after when Mikel went home, and we saw a really good Christian Nice, Nico, Boswell, Sebastian, Lopez, and of course Mikel Nieve. So I think the team finally did a really good job here.
I'm Cheng from John opposition team, and now we finished in Giro. So finally we are here, and there's Tony again. I'm pretty enjoying my last Grand Tour. Thanks.
Gianni Savio, team manager, Androni Sidermec. In the Giro, for me, the best, the courage of Vincenzo Nibali and the sensitivity of Esteban Chaves.
Jerry Ryan, owner of Orica Green Edge. The highlight is no doubt seeing Esteban in that pink, and to see him up there receiving it, and suddenly he realised that, hey, I'm in the pink, and the tears came. It was pretty special.
Your tears as well?
Yeah, it was. Because you know how hard he's worked, and his teammates have worked to get him there, and it was pretty special.
Andrew Hood, Velo News. For me, the highlight of this Giro really just reconfirmed the idea that these short, explosive mountain stages are just way more exciting to watch and to race. You saw the big Tapone across the Dolomites. You know, it was a real drag race, 200 plus Ks, all those big coals. But this weekend we saw those 2 back-to-back short climbing stages where 130, 160 Ks, climb right off the bat. I mean, that is really when professional bike racing is so much more exciting and so much more unpredictable. We've seen that the Tour has tried it out. The Vuelta is kind of the pioneer in that. And to me, I hope that's kind of the way the future of these Grand Tours go.
Look who it is, Daniel. It's the one and only Ciro Scognamiglio. I think he's in a rush because he's pulling a suitcase with him. He's all dressed up, and you look like you're in a rush, Ciro.
Exactly. I wear our T-shirt. No Ciro, no Giro. Maybe I think Richard can, no Armani or Valentino or the Italian fashioner could have ever think about something like that. Yeah. So I'm really happy for this.
Finally, on the final day of the Giro, Ciro, you wear the T-shirt dedicated to you. No Ciro, no Giro. It's available at thecyclingpodcast.com if you'd like to buy one. But you finally wore it, and you went and you had an audience with Filippo Pozzato. We heard from him earlier in the episode.
Exactly. I mean, I did a picture with Filippo Pozzato with my T-shirt. But, well, I could have also choose Vincenzo Nibali, the shark, to have a picture with me with our T-shirt. But I choose Filippo because certainly Nibali is a great rider, is a champion, is the winner of this Giro d'Italia. I don't know if it is so important, but in a certain way, is the winner. But Filippo Pozzato is my soul sister.
The problem with handing an Italian man a microphone, because usually we hold the microphone, Giro, and the hand gestures mean that the microphone waves around quite a lot.
Sorry,
That's tricky.
Sorry, Richard.
Anyway, Giro, you've got to dash. You're heading back home to Milan, sleep in your own bed tonight. Has it been a good Giro? Have you enjoyed it?
I think so. Well, for my customs, so few stages near the sea, maybe one in Catanzaro, one in Bibione, and not more. Well, listeners, you can imagine if I will become one day the owner of the Giro, my ideal race will be completely different. But in any case, a good Giro, in my opinion, really open, 8 different riders in the pink jersey. It's more or less a record. And so for our Italian, the marvelous conclusion with Vincenzo Nibali capable to arrive at the pink jersey. So I think, yes, a good Giro.
Well, Giro, we just have to end with you, our segment with you, by saying a big thank you to you for being a regular and fun and insightful guest on the podcast.
As I already told you, Richard, but I would like to repeat again because it's important for me. Well, my life before was nothing before our podcast, and this podcast for me it's a kind of reason of life. So maybe, Richard, maybe you don't trust me, but please trust me. Without this podcast, maybe I could have already ended my career in journalism. So more or less, I continue, listeners, only for you.
So a man who works for the great Gazzetta dello Sport. It's fantastic that you feel so at home here. That's great. Well, Giro, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's Giro away. Daniel, as the T-shirt that he's sporting so proudly today says, no Giro, no Giro. If Giro leaves, Giro's over.
It's the end, isn't it?
It's the end, yes. So we only got a few little bits of housekeeping really to do. We were played in before Giro there by the Vox Pops, more Vox Pops from today. We've got our thank yous to come. We also are going to play another little extract from Joe Dombrowski's Giro diary. He's been recording a diary for us throughout the Giro to be released as a Friends special on Friday. So if you've got cold turkey, if you're going cold turkey after the Giro, you've got a Friends special to look forward to. £10 to sign up at thecyclingpodcast.com. That will get you 11 exclusive podcasts throughout the year. And it's very interesting. He sent through an interview this morning that he's done with the team doctor. Fascinating stuff. I think he's actually done more journalism at this Giro than us, Daniel.
Speak for yourself.
All right, okay, sorry about that. Anyway, here is Joe Dombrowski musing on something completely unconnected to this Giro.
Someone asked me yesterday, and I had to tell them I have no idea, actually, where I am.
My mother, and maybe your mother's a bit like mine, she thinks that, like, because I'm down here in Italy, that, like, it has to be like I'm seeing all the sights.
Yeah.
Like you're out doing tourist stuff.
Right.
And I
like
almost,
you met the Pope yesterday.
Like I almost don't have the heart to tell her, like, well, some days you see some things and you have some time with.
We're actually in a really shithole hotel in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. The view's good.
Yeah, the view's good.
Like, there's a lemon tree in the courtyard.
Yes.
I don't see many of those.
No. You know, when I was an under 23 rider, we were based in Lucca, in Tuscany, and the national team stayed at Uli Schober's villa, the guy who invented the SRM.
Oh.
And not in his villa, we actually stayed in this thing. It was across from the pool. It was pretty cool. They were divided into like 2-person apartments.
Yep.
But it was like a row house almost. And it was called the Lemonaya. And basically, back in the day, they used to bring the lemon trees inside each little row house. And it was a house for the lemon tree in the winter when it was too cold. And now it's just a house for under 23 cyclists.
Lemon trees themselves, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I just love like a house for a lemon tree.
Yeah, and it was so much better than we were in Belgium also, in Izegem.
Yep.
And that place is terrible.
The old development house.
Yes.
I've been to that place. Didn't it catch on fire?
Well, yeah.
Did somebody burn it down?
I think maybe there was a chance that it was burnt down for some insurance money. No one's really sure on that. But what we are sure of is that it was really dirty and disgusting. And I think it was Jacob Rathy, maybe, when he was like a first-year junior, dropped a date on the floor in the kitchen and stepped on it. And somehow the date never got like cleaned up.
That's disgusting.
And so this place, it was so dirty. Like, if you got up to use the bathroom at night, you had to put shoes on because otherwise your feet would be getting the bed dirty when you got back in bed.
I stayed there. I stayed there for a week.
Yeah, it's nasty. But this date, I think Jacob in his second to last year or last year's U23, like 5 or 6 years later, was still stuck in the kitchen floor.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Those were the days, man.
That was Joe Dombrowski chatting to Matt Bowden, the Cannondale Communications Director, I think is possibly his title. But it really is good stuff, so do sign up and you will get that in a few days. We've also got one more episode of Kilometre Zero to come in the coming week, and that it covers the journey, and there'll be a lot of really looking back on the Giro and bits of a reportage on the road from southern Italy all the way up to where we are now, Turin, I believe. Anyway, Daniel, anything else before we do our thank yous?
I think we should really sum up the Giro, shouldn't we, Richard? A final word on the Giro.
Is that what we've been doing for the last 3 weeks?
Well, not really. I think I would like us to give a bit of an overview of the race, how it ranks in the pantheon of Giros. I mean, Giri, I think I'm going to do my vintage chart later. You know, I do last year at the Tour de France on Twitter, I did this vintage chart of the last 20 Tours de France, where I ranked them between 1 glass of wine and 5 glasses of wine, 5 glasses being the best. I think I'm going to give this about a 3 because...
3?
I think that too much drama as far as the course was concerned was packed towards the end. I can't give more than the 3 to a Giro, which could have had 2 decisive mountain stages in the Alps completely obliterated by snow. I think that was...
But they weren't.
They weren't, but it was foolhardy from...
But they were fantastic.
On the part of RCS, I mean, this was brought into focus yesterday when we were driving over those passes, just how easily those 2 stages could have been completely ruined by the snow and the weather. And I said it earlier in the Giro, RCS were tempting fate. The field wasn't great. That allowed us to watch the emergence of Esteban Chaves and Steven Kruijswijk as a Grand Tour contender. Presumably, if more of the Galacticos had been here, those 2 would have played supporting roles, so that was very enjoyable. But I think great drama on the last weekend. Up until that point, it had been very tense. The fluctuations in the general classification had been subtle, but it probably lacked 2 or 3 really great stages.
It was a very absorbing race, though. You know, the fact that the jersey moved around so much. I think the fact that we saw the emergence of some exciting young riders like Bob Jungels, best young rider.
Well, Jungels' performance, I talked about the emergence of 2 more Grand Tour contenders, and Jungels to finish 6th was quite remarkable. I mean, after 2 weeks or 10 days when he was in the pink jersey and then he lost the pink jersey, I fully expected him to fade completely from view at that point. He didn't, he held on and he was 6th. Then I think he and Etix Quickstep will probably reevaluate the future direction of his career, and they'll probably look at grooming him to become a Grand Tour rider.
Well, I asked him yesterday about that and he said it was far too early to tell, but you would think so, wouldn't you? Yeah. It's very difficult, isn't it, with the absence of the Galacticos, with the, Nibali being the only one here and not being firing on all cylinders. That's for sure. Even the last couple of days, he's got through it. He's won the race. Pre-race favourite wins. But there have been so many twists and turns along the way, and a lot of that is owed to the fact that Nibali has not been at his absolute best.
So how many wine glasses would you give this Giro?
I would give it 4. I would give it 4, Daniel. I mean, this is always I remember having a similar debate after the 2011 Tour de France, which Cadel Evans won, and it was a bit of a...
I think I gave that 4.
4 to that one. I think just because it was a close race, that it wasn't necessarily that exciting a race, but because I think here we had a more exciting race. I think it was...
Anyway,
let's do our thank yous, shall we? Let's run through these, Daniel. Let's do them in alternately. So you read one and then I'll read one. That's how this will work. We want to thank, first of all, our amazing producers, all of whom I've said this many times before, just got in touch offering to help with the cycling podcast when we started a couple of years ago. The team has gradually been added to, and now we've got a really great team of about 5 or 6 people, of whom 5 helped on this Giro. So Daniel, kick it off.
John Mooney,
Alex Adey,
Tom Wally,
Paul Scoynes,
Jonathan Rowe,
who does a lot more than just producing. He runs things. If you have a query about the Friends scheme or any technical problems, Jonathan is the man. He's also been doing a lot of our social media stuff. He is most valuable player, MVP.
Simon Gill,
Greg Trauman,
Nick Christian,
Ciro Scognamiglio. We're on to guests now. So I should have explained, Greg Trauman does our design, Nick Christian's been doing our newsletter, Simon Gill, photographer. So we're on to people who've guested. Ciro Scognamiglio,
Dan Hackenberg,
Dan Lloyd,
Ned Bolting,
Kaylee Fretz,
Andy Hood,
Sophie Smith. And we'd like to help a couple of people who help behind the scenes, particularly on sponsorship.
Nigel Brown, Naughty Nigel,
and Paul Shafto.
Then from RCS, the 2 guys who have helped us a lot in the press room, who are there to give us our press releases, support us. They're really our water carriers. Manolo Bertocchi from Bergamo.
And Matt Rendell.
And our sponsors, Richard.
Sponsors, well, Eurosport, who sponsor us throughout the year.
Stephen Moon, in particular, from Science in Sport.
And Maserati.
Do you know who you've forgotten? You've not gone that list. Well, gone.
And Maserati, who've given us a car for the Giro.
And you have forgotten Amaraterra, who supplied our wonderful music during this Giro d'Italia. And if you want to buy their music, you can find them, or you can find their website address on our Twitter feed, can't you? And you can find them on Twitter, Facebook.
A lot of listeners have bought their CD. They seem to have been very happy with their association with the Cycling Podcast, and we're very happy about that because their music has given us an awful lot.
And they are threatening, promising, hoping to do a concert for us, aren't they, in London?
Stay tuned. Ciro Scognamiglio might be involved in that as well, and what a night that will be.
Thank you, Richard. I would like to thank you, and I'd like to thank Lionel. I know he's back in Watford. But
yes, and our final thank you is expressed best, we think, by Ciro Scognamiglio. So here's Ciro.
And thank you to you, all listeners, to be such a marvelous audience.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Ciro. We echo it. Thank you very much to everybody who's listened. Thank you to everybody who's signed up as a friend of the podcast. Your support is greatly appreciated, and it really helps us to bring these podcasts and to attend races and so on. So that's it. The Giro's over, Daniel. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm glad you thanked me there because I thanked you a minute ago.
I was waiting till the appropriate point.
Okay. Thanks very much, Rich.
Arrivederci.
Have a good evening. Enjoy yourself.
Kotse višćine, nus prigudeši gora, kotse šitene, kotse višćine, nus prigudeši gora, se nu mangiano le femmine. Apri mogliere mia, e fammi cucciasu, cozze ci delle cozze, vicine. Non voglio che te apro, che sta stizzata, e le che non mi dici, gioca sei stato. Lo stato alla cantina, cazzo giocato, tu mi ero camaccoto, su stato alla cantina, cazzo giocato, tu mi ero camaccoto, e mangio ubriacato, cozze ci delle cozze vicine, non spiego le cicora. Cozze ci delle cozze vicine, non spiego de cicora, se non mangia non mi